Hi there, everyone. It's very late in the day. It's Tuesday the 11th, and it's well past 5 o'clock. Um, and I was really hoping to get this part 3 out this morning, but I wasn't not able to, so I hope it's okay. Um, I'm talking about chronic disease and exercise. Yesterday I dealt with hypertension and the exercise considerations. Today I want to get into diabetes. Because it's such a massive issue in our current healthcare system. It's a big part of chronic disease. I'm also going to break it up into two pieces because I don't want this to be super complicated. But diabetes is one of those things where we need to take a little bit more care. So let's crack on. We really talk about three conditions when it comes to diabetes. Type 1 diabetes we know today, is an autoimmune condition. And that happens as a result of the destruction of insulin-producing cells in the pancreas. So type 1 diabetics are very, very often diagnosed very early in life. So you'll know in childhood about being a type 1 diabetic. We also refer to type 1 diabetics as insulin dependent because they would need to inject insulin for the rest of their lives to stay alive. It's that important. Type 2 diabetes, however, is completely different. Myself, I have a problem calling it a disease. For me, it's a symptom. It's a set of symptoms. They're lifestyle-related symptoms. And when you change those, well, you change the condition fundamentally. But essentially, type 2 diabetes ends up at the same point where you may need insulin because as your body becomes more and more insulin resistant. So you may have heard of that, insulin resistance. And that's essentially what happens, and we're not going to get into the mechanisms right now. Prediabetes is exactly what it says. That's a scenario where you have elevated blood glucose whenever you eat carbohydrate, and we talk about impaired glucose tolerance or IGT, and we talk about elevated blood glucose or fasting glucose. That's the more common test that doctors will do. They will test your fasting glucose level, and they'll start to raise concerns when that gets too high. So that's kind of your warning sign. So those are really the conditions that we're going to deal with. So let's, in terms of exercise itself, what's really, really important here, physical activity can act as a standalone mediator of many chronic diseases, but not diabetes. It is physical activity is one of the components that you need to take into account because the fundamental issue here is that you must manage glycemic and also blood sugar, essentially. So managing that requires diet modifications that can be fairly significant. There need to be good cortisol control or stress management, and obviously physical activity as well. So there's an intensive treatment involved to control this, particularly if you've been in that condition for some time. But what's really important, these are completely preventable, they're completely treatable, in many cases, certainly type 2 and prediabetes, reversible. Absolutely no doubt. So these are not death sentences. They are not about, I'm going to have to take medication for the rest of my life. That's just not true. But exercise alone is not enough. So in terms of exercise itself, let's talk about the exercise considerations. Unlike hypertension, where we talk about moderate activity and fairly constant, because you don't want those big changes in blood pressure, diabetes is different. The research is certainly telling us that vigorous intensity aerobic exercise, certainly if cardiorespiratory fitness is the goal, and we know that is the case with many people. Now, vigorous intensity aerobic exercise for diabetics has been shown to be more beneficial. So systems like HIIT or continuous training, intervals, fartlek training, all of these kind of things are super useful for people with diabetes. So high intensity training better. Now, what's really, again, super important, if you have type 2 diabetes, you really cannot skip 2 consecutive days without exercise and aerobic exercise, because that is how we manage to not only treat but reverse this condition by regular exercise, so that your body fundamentally changes its way of doing things. So that's really important. In terms of resistance training, again, we encourage resistance training. However, in the absence of contraindications, so it's really important to speak to your doctor so that if there are contraindications, that he can point those out and you know what to do. And again, higher resistance, heavier weight certainly looks to be beneficial, more beneficial for diabetics than lower intensity resistance training. Although be careful if you have never trained with weights before. So summary of exercise, higher intensities are better for diabetics. The last thing for today is to look at the exercise dose. Now, we've been speaking about exercise dose for a while, and you'll see it there. This is one of those conditions where, you're going to need to take more of the polypill, of your physical activity polypill for, around about 12 weeks. Or so, but 36, you see there 36.8 kilocalories per kilogram. So to figure that out, if you have diabetes and you want to understand how much exercise you need to do, take your body weight, multiply it by 36.8. That will give you your weekly exercise dose. If you divide that by 7, that will give you your daily exercise dose. Now, please remember, that is not daily exercise or daily activity that you see on your Fitbit. That is exercise minutes, or exercise, not minutes, but energy burned during exercise. And you certainly need to be at least moderate. So at least 70% of your maximum heart rate, or whichever kind of exercise intensity scale that you're currently using. So it does mean that you can exercise. You're going to have to exercise a bit more for a while, but at the end of the day, the benefits are worth it. So that's today. Tomorrow, I'm gonna talk about the special considerations that we have to take into account with diabetes. Those are medication issues and the dangers that could present if you're not careful. But that's it for today, and I'll chat to you all tomorrow. Have a good evening.